So this same guy, and this you're gonna have the tenant things in this again. By the way, one of the dreams he had about tenants was about Nashville. I have been knowing for 6 months at least revival's coming to Nashville. Big time. Big time. As the dreams begin, he and I are standing in front of a building which we're going to hold a meeting. A large, well-known church building. Things seemed odd as we stood there. There were no people. The sign wasn't lit up. He ran up the steps of the church to check the doors, shouted back to me, "They're locked. The doors are locked." He says, as I made my way back down the steps to where Dutch was, an angel approached. He handed Dutch a folded note and said to us, "Go to the Anna Bino Cafe." Anna Bino, A-N-A-B-A-I-N-O, Anna Bino Cafe. I've written the address on the note I gave you. We looked at the paper and the address was 4 Ephesians Street, Suite 4 to 7. Ephesians 4, 4 to 7 talks about being one, faith, one baptism, different. And then I knew this would happen. I'm just going to read it because there's an important word I want to get to. I could tell you, but so this was the address of the Anna Bino Cafe. There's one body, one spirit, just as you were called, one hope of your calling, one Lord, one faith, one baptism, one God and Father of all, who is over all, through all, and in all. But to each one of us, grace was given according to the measure of Christ's gift. Therefore it says, when he ascended on high, he led captive a host of captives, and he gave gifts to men. This is what the passage that leads into the fivefold verse. Apostles, prophets, evangelists, pastors, teachers for the equipping of the saints, etc. The word ascend, when he ascended, he led captive a host of captives. Ascend is anabino. He didn't know that when he had the dream, but this is the word. It means to go up or ascend. That's why some people call the fivefold ministry gifts the ascension gifts. Because when he ascended on high, he sent the gifts to us. So that's the name of the cafe. When we arrived, it was more of a truck stop than a cafe. Not sure how we got there, but we went inside, seated at a round table that had 5 chairs. I can recall in the dream looking out the window, seeing many large trucks with heavy equipment loaded on them. Dutch then commented, "Isn't that different? Not one box truck in the yard. Every truck is carrying heavy equipment. There's going to be a lot of earth moving going on around here," I said. We were served breakfast, and as we ate, a man walked up to the table and said to us, "I see there are 3 more that will be joining you. I'll go ahead and bring their meal out." I said to him, "Hood, who are we expecting to join us?" I'm only going to mention, I don't think I'll mention these names. I don't have their permission. But these are all well-known leaders in the body of Christ. One is a Spirit-filled Baptist. One is a Word of Faith man. And the other is, how would I describe him? I guess I'd say he's a part of this stream. Prayer, apostolic, prophetic. I won't tell you his name, but he's known for the 7 Mountain message. Lance won't care if I get his name. sometimes it's just easier to get forgiveness. They're on their way. They got the same instructions we did. The gentleman arrived back at our table with plates of food, put them there with utensils wrapped in an odd-looking napkin, and put new utensils beside our plates. Looking up, we could see the other three men coming through the door of the Anna Bino Truck Stop Cafe. They came to the table, sat down. Dutch said, "Good to see you guys. Glad you made it. So you got the same note we did." The faith guy said, "We did, and we're here. Time is here." I don't know if I'm doing anything or this thing's just, it's the fire. We did, and we're here. The time is here. He said, all I've been prophesying for 50 plus years is on us now. Wow. I'm as excited and full of fire as I've ever been. Let's eat. We got a lot of work to do. The gentleman who brought the food to our table approached again and said, "I'm glad you are here. Unwrap your utensils." As we did, we could see that utensils were wrapped in a scroll. Each scroll had certain words written on it. I could see each of them in the dream and what was written on them. Every scroll had written across the top, Operation Hidden Treasures / Convergence of the Streams. Operation Hidden Treasures. I don't know if I need another microphone or not. Maybe I do. Is there another one I could grab?
It's only happening with you.
Yeah.
Conversion of the stream.
Whatever you.
Stream.
Operation Hidden Treasures / Convergence of the Streams. That's what it said. In addition to this, on the scroll, the Word of Faith guy was given. It said, dredging deeper. Dredging deeper. On Lance's scroll, it said Pentecost hovering platforms. Pentecost hovering platforms. Spirit-filled Baptist guy. He said, sand to rock. Mindset, excavate to the foundations and enlist men.
Hallelujah.
And the other scroll said, navigate the water. When we realized that the man at the table was an angel, he was the same angel that had given us the note at the steps of the large church building. He then began to instruct us on the assignment. He said, each of you have a truck outside in the yard. Each truck has equipment on it. Take your truck and equipment and go to the valley of the streams. He then said, Dutch, you and Greg will have one truck together. I could see that the Spirit-filled Baptist brothers' truck had large pumps on it. Lance's had platforms that hovered. The other guy, the Word of Faith, had a dredging that lives it. And the one that I was in, with Dutch driving, had a large excavator on the trailer we would be pulling. Each of us went to our trucks and left for the streams. We drove onto a very large lot filled with more dredging machines, large pumps, many other kinds of equipment in the valley of streams. We were met there by what appeared to be many workers. They began complaining about working conditions, having to work overtime, and the stressful conditions in which they had to work. The Word of Faith guy stepped out from his 18-wheel rig and said, "You're all fired. We've had enough of whining laborers. This job requires backbone. Grow." Help. Give me a different one. Wire's fine. I can handle a wire, Mike. fix some of this stuff. It's not a big deal. Don't worry about it. You're not interrupting my flow whatsoever. Thank you, brother. Thank you. So the word of faith guy says you're all fired. We've had enough of whining laborers. This job requires backbone. Grow one or leave. They all left. They all left. We looked at him and thought, what are we going to do now? There are no laborers to complete the mission. I said, well, we have the scroll to enlist men. Hang tight, we'll be back soon. So the Baptist, Spirit-filled Baptist brother speaks up and says, we will have all the equipment in place by the time you return. We're not going to miss this outpouring. So there's an old bus sitting on the lot we were in. It looked like it hadn't been driven in years. Written on the side of the bus in faded paint was the gospel of the kingdom. And I don't know about this next one. I have no idea what this is all about. I'm waiting for one of these prophets to tell me. But on the back of the bus was a bumper sticker that said, honk if you love Jesus. Another thing I think of is maybe God's connecting this to the previous movement. We boarded the old bus and Dutch said, which way, Hood? He said, we're going to Hebron. Hebron is covenantal friendship. Hebron is also known as the stronghold of giants because giants captured Hebron and renamed it Kirjath Arba, which means the city of Arba, because Arba was the greatest of all the giants. So he took it, defiled it, changed the name, and now Abraham, the friend of God, is buried in the stronghold of a giant. He said, we're going to Hebron. As we made our way down the road, we passed many church buildings that were abandoned and some dilapidated. We came to a city limit sign that read Hebron, population undetermined. Just past the sign, I said to Dutch, turn right. He made a sharp, quick right turn down a narrow dirt road. This dirt road led us to a wooden building. The building had a sign on it that said, tenant, the well of fire. Clergy that had to get saved. Tenant's tavern and well. Dutch and I walked into the building. We could see many men and women sitting around at tables in this room that was dimly lit. All of them had empty cups sitting in front of them. I spoke up and said, I need your attention. We're here to enlist for a new dredging and excavating project. It's the merging of the streams. It's the third great awakening, and it is the opportunity of your lifetime. A man spoke up from the back and said, how can we work? Our cups are empty. How can we be enlisted if we've been forsaken? I didn't address the man's question. I stepped back, opened the door to let more light into the room, and decreed with a forceful voice, I activate the mantle of tenants well. I decree your cups are full. Drink this new wine and meet me outside. Then I said, bring your work gloves, because this is going to be like nothing you've ever worked on in your entire life. I walked outside, the two of us, their cups filled, they drank. Inside the building, we could not clearly see who these people were. We actually didn't know who we had just enlisted to labor. As we were standing outside and the people began to emerge from the building, we could see, and we knew these were fivefold ministers who had fallen or been rejected in their ministry. They had been outcast, driven from the church for one reason or another.
Holy.
We recognized many of them. Some had nationally known ministers. Others had just served in local communities. He said to me in the dream, look at their gloves. Those are not work gloves. They're boxing gloves. And I'm not finished. You have no idea how much this dream rocked me. As we looked closely, we could see their gloves, like they themselves were tattered, torn, dry, cracked from being weathered. Dutch and I began to weep. Then we saw where each pair of gloves had written on them, Everlast and Evergreen. Now, some of you have no idea what that means, but many of you do. If you get the book, small book, An Appeal to Heaven, you'll read the story. It's a dream that was given to me in 2006. Not to me, but given to another person who gave it to me. I boxed 5 giants and knocked out 5 giants in 5 rounds, 1 per round, 1 punch each, alternating fists. Walked out of the ring, held up the gloves, and said, if we're going to take out the giants in this season, you have to wear these 2 gloves. One said Everlast and one said Evergreen. And that was not Greg, by the way, that had that dream. Everlast is from Genesis 21:33. It's Abraham calling on everlasting God. I don't have time to go into it, but he realizes it's Olam, everlasting God, Olam El, that has kept him for 25 years. Has navigated him through failures, serious failures, sin, unbelief, and brought him to a place of strength and covenant faithfulness and faith, unwavering faith. And he calls on him. You're the God outside of time who, when you called me, when you gave me the promise, the God who knows the end from the beginning, you knew I would fail. You knew what was in me, but your faith was not in me, it was in yourself. You knew what you could do. You knew you'd get me to the point where you could use me to do this. You're bigger than my past, and you're bigger than my present and my future. You're the God outside of time, the eternal God, Olam. And God said to me, if you're going to believe I'm going to do what I've told you I'm going to do in America, you're going to have to believe that I'm bigger than America's failures. Because I didn't call this nation based on looking ahead and seeing that it would be perfect. And I didn't call this nation based on this nation's works and ability to be perfect. I called this nation based on what I can do. And he said, you're going to have to believe that. You're going to have to believe that the blood of Jesus cleanses all sin and unrighteousness. And this is why the enemy is so caught up right now in trying to bring up past sins and things in our past and rewrite our history because they don't want you to know that's forgiven. They don't want you to believe that God can still use this nation because demons are afraid that God's going to use this nation. The other one is evergreen, and that's covenant. And in Genesis 21:33, Abraham called on the everlasting God and planted a tamarisk tree, which is an evergreen tree, which is eternal covenant. You're going to have to believe that I keep covenant and mercy to 1,000 generations. You're going to have to believe that I'm bigger than your failures.
That's right.
And if you wear those two gloves, you can take out these giants. And it's really the only way we can take out the giants. And that was the beginning of my appeal to heaven journey. So these guys came out of the bar. I love that. Don't you love that?
Yeah.
I just love that. I'd have been so disappointed in this dream if they'd have come out of a church building somewhere. It's like they just a bar. It's awesome, isn't it? They came out of a bar. I'd rather hang out with sinners most of the time over a bunch of preachers.
Amen.
I can't believe I said that. That's the truth. I get so tired of the religious. Where you running now, brother? I just want to say, what's it to you? Some of you don't like that I said that, but I'm going to tell you, let me just tell you this. You can just process this a little bit. Jesus would rather hang out with the publicans and sinners than the religious crowd. And he didn't even have an issue with the prostitute washing his feet. I'm still, that one's a stretch for me. If I'm in a room full of preachers and a prostitute comes in and starts acting like she knows me, washing my feet, crying. The first thing's not going to be some lesson about forgiving much or love or whatever he said to this one. First thing I'm probably going to say is, I don't know this lady. They're probably going to help her up and say, Susie, would you minister to Joanne or whatever? Jesus, he didn't have any problem with it. How I got off on that, I guess, because of the bar here. Each had a pair of gloves written on them, evergreen, everlast, because they're going to take out giants. They're in Hebron. The place has been taken over by giants, but they're going to be a part of the group that take Hebron back. That's the point of this dream, of this part of the dream. There were hundreds of them standing before us with smiles on their faces and fire in their eyes from the new wine they had just ingested. A voice came from among them and said, we're ready to work if you'll have us. get back in the fight? I said, load up, we're going to work. We arrived back where all this massive equipment was, and the bus unloaded, and those who had been on the bus made their way to the equipment that they were familiar with and went to work. The Word of Faith guy approached us with the other man and said, we've dredged deeper than we've ever been before. We got enough of the muck out of the streams to where they won't pollute each other. We have enough muck out of the streams that they won't pollute each other. The Spirit-filled Baptist guy said, we got set up, started working, our pumps have removed the sand. Remember, his was sand and rock. We've removed the sand from the bottom of the streams and we've found rock, solid rock. The water is clearer than it's ever been. There's a lot to unpack in these dreams. Lance said that you guys are going to have to navigate your excavations from the water, the platforms, not the land. I have the Pentecostal platforms ready. See that platform thing? I've been thinking about this. I think platforms support things. Maybe it's this mountain mover. God's going to do what we've been asking him to do, and these people in these 7 mountains are going to be on fire with Pentecost fire, and they're going to support and be a part of what we're doing, not just spectators, but a part of it. That's what a platform does. It supports something. I don't know. There's a lot to unpack here. But he said, I had to rewrite the entire manual of operation. It was so cluttered with religion. The platforms will carry your excavators as you and your team remove the land between the streams to create the river. The Pentecost platforms are ready to board and can handle the weight of your excavators. Then began to address the work crews that were on the excavators. We could see that each of them had on work shirts like the ones that have company names and the workers' names on them. The company name on the shirts was Mamlaka, Mamlakah. Mamlaka, I had to look that word up. It's a Hebrew word, means kingdom. 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 And the name of all the workers was the same on every shirt, and the name was Hidden Treasure. Dutch and I climbed aboard the first excavator, loaded it on the first Pentecostal platform. The workers, along with the Word of Faith guy and the Baptist guy, boarded excavators and drove them up on Pentecost platforms. Lance and a team of workers monitored the Pentecost platforms. We began to remove the land between the streams. Once we started this portion of the work, I knew in the dream that it took 12 months to complete the work. And then a great river burst forth that had never been seen in the history of humankind. I knew in the dream that the work was completed in the month of September. I know some of these dreams aren't literal, but I believe this one is. I believe God is saying to us that between now and next September, He's going to be doing a very extraordinary and important work of bringing the streams together. That it's going to require this for us to accomplish everything He needs us to accomplish. It's not just going to be the streams coming together. We're going to believe that God can restore people and bring them back into their assignment and a place of productivity. Most Christians believe that God can do for sinners what he can't do for his kids. They don't have any problem believing that God can forgive the sin of a sinner and not remember it anymore, but they don't believe he can do it for his kids or will do it. It's like, you get in by grace, but once you get in, it's all works. And if you fail or fall, then you're just done because you don't get any grace, and God can't forgive you and cleanse you in a way that it's not there anymore. And I'm not sure where some of this theology comes from, but probably. See, there's no contradiction in believing God can do this, and accountability, and being pure in your walk with Him. There's no contradiction. The dream's not saying that these people are living in sin while they're doing this. So, the religious world's going to struggle with some of this. And the older brother that stayed home is going to struggle with some of this. Especially when some of these people start working miracles and seeing people come to the Lord, and they're experiencing more fruit than some of us that have been doing this forever. And we're gonna struggle with it. We're gonna have to get past that and get to a place of humility and say, give the guy that just got saved or came back to you recently, give him the same wages that you're giving me. I'm good with that. Use him. How can I help? Frankly, some of this religiosity that's crept into the church is why one of the reasons the world doesn't want anything to do with it. There's a whole lot more mercy most of the time from unbelievers toward people that have fallen or made mistakes. There's a whole lot more mercy usually from them than there is from the church. What time is it? 11:33. The anointing lifts in 27 minutes. We just should pray for a few minutes. I think it is significant that we're here in the heartland. Yeah, God can probably, He's God. He can do things anywhere He wants, but sometimes He does try to paint a picture for us through geography. Just like Hebron. And I think it is symbolic, prophetic, that we are standing here in the heartland of America. Kansas City still be considered the heartland, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Is it really? So I didn't realize that the Kansas City is called the heart of America. Is that right?